Did one quarterback's off-field antics officially alter your championship week lineup? Can Keenan Allen be trusted to put up big numbers after a disappointing Week 15? And which former fantasy darling at running back will help you win a title this weekend? Plus, the 16-time FFPC main event and Football Guys League champion Steve Highfill will hang out to talk about Jeff Wilson's Week 16 upside, unleashing Jalen Hurts in the championship round, and much more. We've got a great show for you. Farrell Elliott is here. I'm Eric Balkman. Stick around. Your high-stakes fantasy football hour starts now.
Broadcast live and heard around the world, you are now listening to the most entertaining hour of radio on the planet. Welcome to the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour, presented by MyFFPC.com, with your hosts Eric Balkman and Farrell Elliott. The High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour is your home for analysis from the best players in the world. And now, because no one else was available, here's Eric Balkman and Farrell Elliott.
Happy holidays to you. Season's greetings to all of you, Fantasy Football Players Championship listeners. Thank you to the Quiet Hollers. Check out all their music at quiethollers.com. Greetings, salutations, and Merry Christmas. All you Balkaholics and Ferrelliacs listening around the globe, welcome to the latest episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour, presented by MyFFPC.com. I am, of course, your slightly above average host, Eric Balkman. Almost forgot my name there. And my co-host is the definitive commissioner of fantasy football, Farrell Elliott. Farrell, an early Merry Christmas to you. I know you had a busy day today. How are you holding up? You ready for an hour of high-stakes fantasy football radio?
I am, Balky. Thank you, and Merry Christmas to you. You know, Christmas over the last few years has been a struggle with health issues and the family and things that we just didn't have any control of. It's been a tough year, but, man, this Christmas season is beginning to warm my heart. And we got a string of NFL games to keep us engaged all through Christmas weekend. That's a gift that will just keep on giving for me.
I'm very excited because we're crowning champions not only in the FFPC but in the Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship as well after this weekend. It all kicks off, as you said. We get one game on Friday. We get a big triple header on Saturday, football all day from 1 p.m. until about 11 o'clock Sunday night, and then it all wraps up on Monday Night Football this week. No Thursday night game, obviously, no game tomorrow. So we'll get the Monday night game, and Week 16 will wrap up with the Buffalo Bills and the New England Patriots. Excited to talk about that game. Excited to talk about the whole slate really on the show tonight. Coming up, we're going to discuss Giovanni Bernard, how to handle him this week, which young AFC North receiver is going to bring you to the promised land this weekend, and Steve Highfill is going to join us to talk about how he managed to get 10 teams into both the FFPC main event as well as the Football Guys Championship rounds this year as well. Shout out to the chat room. You can post any questions you might have in there. If you want to connect with us on Twitter, the show is at HSFF Hour. I am at Eric Balkan. Remember to check out Farrell's Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship at KFFSC.com. That definitely gets the bulky stamp of approval there. Facebook.com/HSFF Hour is where to reach us. 347-426-3682. If you want to give us a call tonight, that's 347-GAME-OVA. If you want to send us an email, we got a bunch of emails we'll get to at the bottom part of the show. highstakesfantasyfootball@gmail.com is where to send those. We'll try to get to all the chat room questions, all the tweets, and emails and fantasy feedback coming up before we let you go. Enjoy your Christmas. Shout out to our audio engineer, my best friend Bryce, our producer and mutual friend Rob. The 2021 world-famous FFPC Playoff Challenge, ladies and gentlemen, is back. Once again, a $500,000 grand prize, a $1.1 million prize pool, a 12-player lineup this year as opposed to the 10-player lineup, a little bit more strategy with more teams in the playoffs. It's going to be fun. $200 to enter that, capped out at 6,250 teams. Deadline for that is the first game of Wild Card Weekend, as is the Football Guys Playoff Challenge. That's only $35 to enter, and you could still win a $100,000 grand prize in there. Again, 12-player lineup, deadline, Wild Card Weekend. Check that out. It's not out yet, but it will be in the wee hours tomorrow as I am putting the finishing touches on the files and editing. The RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown with Brad Cruz this week, a longtime FFPC and Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship player. Guy who's won, along with his brother Tim, nearly $120,000 playing over the years. Great insight from him as far as Week 16 goes and how to build your teams next year as well. Check that out at rotoviz.com/podcast. Early Thursday morning. So we are literally hours away from that being dropped. All right, let's get into the Fantasy Flash. Shout out to Football Guys, Draft Sharks, RotoWorld, and Rob for tonight's topics that we're going to be talking about before we welcome Steve Highfill on. Field Yates on Twitter actually has pointed this out. Baker Mayfield is fantasy football's third highest scoring quarterback over the last 4 weeks. He's completing over 70% of his passes. He is second in touchdown passes with 10 over that stretch, third in passing yards with over 1,200 in the last 4 games, threw for 297 and 2 touchdowns against the Giants. So you look at it's been a mixture of things. The emergence of Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt really providing that backbone running game that Baker Mayfield needs for play action to make sure that he's getting the ball downfield to his playmakers. And offensive line has been really good. I mean, he hasn't been under pressure a whole lot. In fact, he's only faced pressure on 26.7% of his dropbacks all season. That's 5th lowest in the NFL. The Browns get New York this week, Farrell, and we're going to get into Jalen Hurts in a little bit. But I think fantasy owners need to take a hard look at starting Mr. Mayfield for a championship.
Oh, Balky, I almost recused myself from answering this question because, in our conversations before, I've never been a large Baker Mayfield fan, and I think some of the commentary, some of the statistics are a little fuzzy. I would argue that Baker Mayfield doesn't go through the progressions and escapes the rush by leaving the pocket and bailing out on plays and puts Cleveland into a free-form offense. That's what he was doing in the first 6 of 11 of his games this year when he failed to log 200 yards. Now, I think you are so correct in that his passing game is determined by what he can build off of play action and the success of the running game. Fortunately for him, he's got 2 very, very good running backs. Not only can they carry the rock, they can catch the ball. But I think that in his last 4 games, he's had the pleasure of an easier run than we expected. The Ravens have been COVID compromised. They've averaged 2.4 sacks per game this year, but they did not bring the type of Ravens defense in that matchup. The Titans are the worst. Titans have the worst pass rush in the business. The Giants game, I think we can discount what we saw last Monday night. I'd like to talk a little bit in depth about that. Players came ready to play for the New York Giants, and the coaches were not up to the task. It looks like the junior varsity coaches came in and ran the Giants that night. I know they lost their offensive coordinator, but they did not look like they had a very good game plan put together in that game defensively. And then in that 4-game run where he has been successful, he also had played against the Jags, who have lost their offensive continuity and are giving up close to 40 points in every game. So what I think Baker Mayfield may engage with this weekend is the New York Jets team going for 2-0, baby. And if you watched them, they got to Jared Goff. They sacked him 3 times. They had a wonderful pick, number 37, Bryce Hall. Balky, when he was drafted, he was a 5th-round guy out of Virginia. I couldn't believe he was still on the board. That one-handed interception and more athletic plays are due to come from him. The NFL, especially at this time of year, it's a week-to-week league. Thus the expression, any given Sunday. I am not going to go into my championship in Week 16 depending on Baker Mayfield to carry it for me. I don't think he got you there based on what we talked about and what he did in the first 11 games. I think you likely have someone else, and someone else is who I'm going with here.
Yeah, Farrell Elliott, ladies and gentlemen, going beyond the box score, taking you deep inside to the game. So certainly if you are thinking Mayfield, maybe think again. Nothing wrong with considering him. I think there's some interesting quarterbacks, as we get past the obvious ones, in the top 10 or whatever. But, whether it's Drew Brees or Jared Goff, Matt Ryan, Tua Tagovailoa, that's another one, too, against Las Vegas this week. That's another guy that you'll have to consider. Well, Drew, we're going to get into some more quarterback analysis here shortly, but I think those are all guys that we'll explore before the top of the hour here. The Washington football team is actually talking with the NFL about some social media posts showing Dwayne Haskins out at a strip club without a mask, according to Tom Pelissero on Twitter. Now, I believe he has been fined, was it $40,000 or $50,000, somewhere in that neighborhood. He's lost his captainship with the team as well. Now, I don't know what's going to happen here, Farrell, but if the NFL decides that he is COVID compromised, Alex Smith has to be able to go. Otherwise, it's going to be Taylor Heineke, who was on the practice squad with Washington last week. Let's just frame it this way. If Alex Smith or Haskins is out there, you're going to be able to play McLaurin. You're going to play Logan Thomas. If Antonio Gibson's out there, you're probably playing him as well. What if it's Heineke? Does that cause you to bench McLaurin or Thomas or any of these other Washington pass catchers, Farrell, that you normally would start?
I would roll with McKissick, and I would think that Thomas would be a safety valve. So in our 1.5 points per FFPC tight end catch, I would be hesitant to shoot the horse that won the race. Thomas had an impressive season high in catches last week. So, he's a St. Louis Battle Hawk and a grad of Old Dominion. Comes from Old Dom, and he can get out on the field, and let's see what he can do. I'm a big believer, Balky. We say it every week. Next man up football. I sure hope Alex Smith plays. I don't want to see Washington's rosy path that they're on as a favorite now to win the NFC East get compromised by unavailability at quarterback. Haskins does not understand what's required for him to be a quarterback in this league. There's people that should be servicing his transition and making him understand what's expected. They're obviously not there for him. His actions are on his shoulders, but someone should help him at the point of the year understand the best path to take, and it's just a real shame. And losing the captaincy of a team, that's a big deal.
Yeah, and I think he kind of knew the writing's on the wall. Like, look, I'm not going to be back with these guys next season. What's the point? I'm just in here until they can get Alex Smith in or the next guy in. So, while I understand what he's doing, it's certainly not a good look for him. And you need to treat yourself as a professional, play out the season, and get ready for your next opportunity in the NFL. A guy you talk about next man up football.
For him.
No, it's not, and he's creating that too. You talk about next man up football, Farrell, and certainly that's been the case in Cincinnati with their backfield this year, especially at the running back position. Giovanni Bernard, a guy that I had basically given up on after having so many opportunities to be the bell cow this year. What does he do? Goes up against one of the toughest rush defenses in the NFL, 25 carries for 83 yards and a touchdown. He also catches a touchdown in that game as well. It was insane because if you look back at week 14, he fumbled on the very first touch he got in the game, and then did not play again until the third quarter. But the Bengals apparently had no problems giving Giovanni Bernard 25-plus touches with their whole game plan centered around him. He and Ryan Finley actually combined for 35 rushes, only 13 pass attempts for the Bengals, and they controlled that game all the way through in getting that upset win over Pittsburgh, who I think I said earlier on a show I did earlier today, it looked like Pittsburgh was never going to lose again. Now it looks like they're never going to win again. Just the fickleness of the NFL. Pretty crazy stuff. So I guess my question to you is, seeing what we did see last week, Giovanni Bernard at Houston, not a great rush defense. Is this a guy that you can flex out and feel good about it in the FFPC?
You feel very, very good about it. Those 25-plus touches translated to 22.7 fantasy points, and I have no reason to believe that we're going to see anything different against the Houston Texans. I look back to what David Montgomery did against this club when Chicago beat them 36-7. I think we might be looking at some of the same results here. Bernard is Bernard is a veteran player. He's still got his quicks. He still can find the hole. I like a lot of things about what he's doing. And Cincinnati is in a situation where they're playing for their future. They're playing for their jobs. They're playing for a roster spot on the team moving forward. They're loose, and they're playing against a defense that they should have a continued good time against this weekend.
Speaking of running backs here, Lindsey Theory put this out on Twitter, I believe yesterday, and confirmed by multiple outlets. Sean McVay says that Cam Akers is not going to be playing against the Seahawks this week. He has that nasty high ankle sprain that we always dread when we're looking at starting our players in our fantasy lineups. This could be a multi-week injury, so we'll see if Akers is able to come back next week or even for the postseason. This is, it's one of those things where again, it's the theme tonight. Next man up football. It's going to be Darrell Henderson. It's going to be Malcolm Brown. Farrell, same kind of question with the Bernard thing. Darrell Henderson goes up against the Seahawks this week. How much does the presence of Malcolm Brown concern you if you are deciding that Henderson is going to be one of your flexes as you try to win a title here?
There's enough there for both guys, especially against the Seahawks. If you look back to what Malcolm Brown did in the first meeting against the Seahawks, he definitely seized the opportunity. I think it was 2 touchdowns. Names are going to be made for these two players as I think the Rams make a run towards the Super Bowl. They may even get there. These guys are good backs. They're solid backs. They kept Akers on the bench for the entirety of the season. Man, I would love to see Akers play. But these guys are going to seize the opportunity and go forward. I like Henderson. I like Brown. I'm not going to worry about playing either one of them. I consider them 1A and 1B. Henderson gets the most chances. Maybe Brown, with the goal line work, does more with his chances in fantasy points.
Good stuff analysis. Good analysis there, Farrell. We always appreciate that, and I think I'm with you on that as well. It's hard for me to see either one of those guys being the guy in Week 16, and I think you're limiting your upside, especially if you have to climb up the leaderboard in the main event or in the Football Guys Players Championship. I do want to bring in our guest who does have a lot to say on this and is an expert on this. He's been playing fantasy football for more than 2 decades, along with 10-plus experience in the FFPC. Over those years, 16 main event and Football Guys league titles, 14 second-place finishes, and numerous third-place finishes, along with seeding bonuses, have all been deposited into this guy's FFPC player account. He's finished in the top 50 of the Football Guys Championship round the last 2 years. He's got 3 teams in the top 100 in this year's championship round, 2 teams in the top 200 of the main event championship round. He actually picked up on DFS less than a month ago, and he's already won over $120,000 doing that, winning the $100,000 first place in the Thursday Night Football 300,000 Deep Stack Showdown on DraftKings. He's one of 550 team owners to attend the first high-stakes live draft event in Las Vegas at the W Coffin. He joins us tonight to talk about how he's managed all those teams into the championship round once again. Please welcome onto the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour, Steve Highfill. Steve, season's greetings to you, my friend, and thanks for making up some time for us this week.
Hey, glad to be able to have the chance to do it, and then looking forward to a good final few weeks here playing in the championship.
Yeah, we are too, and I know you are no stranger to that. We're going to get into how you've managed your teams not only this year but in years previous to this point, Steve. Can you tell us what the listeners what you're doing for a living when you're not playing semi-professional high-stakes fantasy football?
Yes, my real job is law firm merger and acquisition consultant. I've been doing that for 26 years, merging law firms, and I've also merged software technology companies and biotech and medical device companies. And recently I started my first SPAC, and I'm focusing in on telecom, connectivity, and communications mergers and acquisitions. So I've been around numbers and Wall Street my entire career.
Mergers and acquisitions, Steve, that's obviously what you've done with your rosters, because you're merging all of them with multiple stacks of players, and your Buffalo Bills have been just tremendous for you. Allen, Singletary, and Diggs all on one team. Did you plan it? Did it happen by accident? And
I
that was
planned.
Congratulate you for your patience with Singletary. So tell us a little bit.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I draft multiple teams, and one of my draft plans going into one of the teams was to stack those 3 players specifically based on my research, because I felt I could get really good values for each one of them. I was able to pick up.
Did you see any of them shooting up the boards that sort of made you uncomfortable? I kind of remember Singletary getting a little tougher to get as time went on, but to my amazement, Diggs seemed to hang around the 5th and 6th round. Am I remembering correctly?
That's right. And I draft from the moment you guys open up the first draft on the primary and the football guys. Football guys is usually really early, and I'd like to draft as early as possible, going off of any of the data and information I can get from the off-season training and off-season rumors that's running around. And if you recall, there's a lot of questions and doubters around Stiggs' trade, and Allen has been, a whipping post for, the last couple of years for his throwing interceptions and propensity to run too soon. And looking at what was setting up, I felt like I could get Diggs as a wide receiver 1 late or in the mid rounds, and I got Singletary in the 5th in that particular draft and Diggs in the 6th, and then I got my best value really stealing Allen in the 9th, and I felt Allen's off-season work that he was putting in was going to pay big dividends. He was very comfortable with the coaching staff and the offense, and he was doing the work to really improve his throwing motion and narrow his stance in the pocket and not run until he really has to. And you could see that paying dividends this year. His completion rate really skyrocketed this year, and we see the results for him as a fantasy producer for us. So I think stacking those guys, I got value at every one of them. It allowed me to pick Kelsey at number 1, and of course Eckler at number 2, but he's been injured all year. But I always like to go for, if I'm late in the round, for Kelsey or top tight end, but usually Kelsey, because he ended up being better than virtually everyone else on that line and more consistent than anyone else on that line as a first-round pick.
And more available. Did
right.
Zach Moss ever enter – where did Zach Moss enter into your mindset? And with your love of the Bills here, did it extend to the other guys? Beasley's put up big points week in, week out here as we've gone to double-digit weeks. And
I actually picked up Beasley in a few leagues because I felt like he would do well, and I picked him up in a few leagues. I've never been a real fan of Moss. I felt like he was going to be more of a developing player, and they may use him around the goal line. But every time he gets a chance, he makes a bad play or has a fumble, don't pick up a block. So I thought Singletary will outclass him over the year, and I targeted him as my RB2 in this particular team.
One of the tough calls, Steve, that you're going to have to make on one of your Football Guys Players Championship teams in contention is in regards to Keenan Allen. He disappointed. He let me down. It's probably my fault because I didn't have a better option behind him, so I had to roll with him. But how he gets this long week because he didn't play since Thursday, and now he gets to play on Sunday against the Denver Broncos pass defense. Is that enough? Is that enough rest? Do you feel good about rolling him out there again in your starting lineup after he underwhelmed against the Raiders?
I really made a big mistake starting him last week on the Thursday night game. I bought into the hype that he was going to play, and just because he's such a target monster on that team, I felt like even if he was limited in his snaps, like it was reported he was going to be, that it was going to be okay and it'd be worth the risk. And I sat him, and it really hurt me on that particular start. And I will not be starting him in any league or team league this week at all, or DFS. And it's funny, I faded him completely into DFS, and that's the DFS I won the $100,000 last Thursday because I focused on his replacement, the two replacements, Goyden and I think it was Johnson, and that paid off. Yeah, that paid off big time for me. So although I didn't do so good with FFPC, I was able to listen to the data that's right in your face and not start him on the DFS. But I will not start him this week. He hasn't shown up to practice with none this week, and even if he did, he's probably going to be on a limited snap count. And I don't care who he's going against. I just wouldn't bank on him. And I'm in a good enough spot that I have Corey Davis and Justice Jefferson to replace him in that lineup, and either one of those guys would be sufficient.
Those are some really terrific players. Injury is such a big part of this, and when you have depth like that, you can move on to something that's very, very valuable. I certainly didn't stack him because this was my worthwhile 49er, but I started drafting earlier, and Steve, I don't get to draft as near as much as you do, and I wouldn't, even if I did, I wouldn't be as good at it. Congratulations on everything that you accomplished with it. When I started early this year, Raheem Mostert was a guy that I absolutely loved. The recency of memory of his activities against the Packers in the playoffs, and it's just a player that I thought really was coming into his own. Up in age a little bit, but low in mileage, and I just was expecting a big, big year, and we got that year until he got hurt. And I didn't really look at the players behind him to understand who they were because I thought Mostert so separated himself from the other guys. We talked a little bit about him last week, and people are leaning into this player, and I really can't give good advice about him. Can you shed a little light on who Jeff Wilson is, and if you have him, whether you have him or not, would you feel comfortable playing him this weekend?
Well, I don't know if you heard the news. You probably have. Maybe the audience hasn't, but Mostert is done for the year. He's on IR as of yesterday. And so Wilson has become the favorite of the coaches there in their scheme. They're a run-heavy scheme as well. And they've been trusting him even with Mostert healthy, especially in the red zone, and he's been getting scores. With Mostert out of the picture, he's going to really carry the bulk of the load, and he will be a must-start, in my opinion, this weekend if I had him. I had Mostert and did not pick up any backup players for Mostert. And I got him primarily early because of value, because he wasn't signed to a contract yet. And there was a lot of talk about the kid who came over from Atlanta. What was that guy's name? Coleman. Yes, that's right. And I, like you, liked what I saw at the end of the year. Mostert really had a great year-end playoff run. So I had Mostert on a lot of my teams, and I got him at pretty good value because there's a lot of uncertainty whether he was not going to show up training camp or not. And but I didn't get any of his backup players. I did pick up Wilson in a couple of leagues where he wasn't rostered and got him, through the bidding process really cheap. And I will be rolling him out as a starter RB1 this weekend if I had him.
Good for you, buddy. Good for you.
We're talking with Steve Highfill, the 16-time winner of the FFPC in main event in Football Guys League Championships, 10 teams in the championship round this year. And let's shift the focus to James Robinson, obviously somebody who has been so integral on so much success for a lot of teams that are going to be playing for it all this weekend. It's been slowing down a little bit, and now he's got a hobbled ankle. Now, Doug Marrone said he was going to give Robinson the week off for practice. Pretty weird to see an undrafted free agent rookie miss all practice and still play on Sunday. But Marrone said, look, Robinson told me that he thinks he's going to be ready to play, and he wants to play. So similar to kind of how Keenan Allen was on Thursday, Steve, is Robinson, is that going to be a smart sit? Or if he's active, do you have to play him?
Let me tell you, this kid is the real deal. I'm in Jacksonville, born and raised here, and I'm a big Jaguars fan. And, I really spend a lot of time down and around the team whenever I can. I know the local reporters. We all thought that the coaches had lost their minds when they let Fournette go. And nobody knew what Robinson was unless you were at practices. This kid is the real deal, and you could see it by his performance this year. He's been a plug-and-play number one, and if the kid says he's ready to go, he's ready to go. Roll him out. I would never sit this guy if he says he's ready to go.
I love that. Well, that's
because he's a well-rounded RB1 because this guy, he catches the ball out of the backfield, and he runs and has one of the best vision runners I've seen in a long time. So certainly, if you've got him, he's good to go.
He's only going to get better because look at the quarterback play that he's doing that with, and the offensive line play.
The future is his. He's the real deal.
He's got a lot to look forward to. I picked him up at like around 12 and 13 last year, just off of the little bit of rumors that I was hearing in some of these. We have some guys. Their team name is FPI. They play here in Kentucky with us, Stephen, and also in Las Vegas at the FFPC, and they were the first ones that when we announced some spring drafts. They said, where is Robinson? Because his name wasn't on the list. His pre-NFL draft back in March. Those guys are anxious to put him on their roster, and they've enjoyed the benefits of that too. It's just like when Keenan Allen looked into the TV and says, start me. Don't sit me or something like that. I didn't see it, but everybody reported it. You can't ever really trust players because players are going to believe in his ability. I would rather see it than hear somebody talking about it. And that kid has done all his talking on the field. Outside of Keenan Allen, or through your history, and what a fine history it is, Balky alluded to us, and I'd like to just take a moment to be very, very grateful of where we are in this hobby and what has happened in this industry. The FFPC play that you did this year and all, your proficiency as a player allows you to go into the daily and win a big, big prize. But what's more important in the season long, we're sitting here and looking at a prize of $500,000. Did you ever think that we would be in that situation? And what a great tribute it is to what this business has been built up to, and to get that $500,000,
it's come a long way.
It's crazy. It is, and the right people are in place and running it. And so, so tell us about the mistake that you're not going to make, where you can get that $500,000, because that's what everybody needs. We all sit back and look back and we say, "Oh, I made all these mistakes," and obviously you're not making many. So, have you made some?
It's just like I play a lot of poker too, a lot of poker tournaments, and the same thing goes there. It's about making the best decisions you can. You can't control everything because there's still going to be some chance to it, and limit your mistakes. And it's the same thing that you have to practice with discipline in managing fantasy teams, or especially season-long fantasy teams. It takes a lot of time. It's a hobby, but it takes time, and you have to enjoy it. And I come from a football background, and I really enjoy the analytics of it and the matchup analysis and doing the homework. And you're going to if you're going to take it seriously, you're going to be in something at a stakes game. You might as well be in it and take it seriously, especially if you do have money at stake. It's a $500,000 prize is unbelievable. But It's just because there's a lot of players and they're paying their buy-ins. And I remember the first live draft I went to back in 2002, and I was hooked right then and there on high stakes fantasy football. And there was there were some other sites that had started before you guys had started, and they just weren't. They were bulky. They didn't run as smoothly. And when I heard about you guys and came over and played with you that first year. I think the first year I played was 10 or 11, and I left the other guys who had their site previously. And there was just so many more players. The website was so much better. All the issues with the NFL on their cut of the industry was all finally worked out. And you just had a great product. And so I've been playing there ever since. And I don't think I'd ever play anywhere else at this point. But to get to the end, for those big prizes, it's not just what you can do. It's luck too. A lot of teams are going to be very similar at the end, and it may be just one or two different players here or there, and maybe you didn't get ravaged by injury, and you made the right start. You could forget to do something one week, like that you got a kicker on a bye, and lose by half a point. That head-to-head that week, or at the end of the year, or even in the DFS, you could lose by tenths of a point. So there's going to be some chance to it. Remember, you can't take it too seriously because you could just roll out the best decisions and try to limit your mistakes, and then it's up to Lady Luck at that point in time that you get there. But as long as you manage your teams best as you can, put the time in, and you're there in the end, you have a chance. But it's going to be those teams that pop 180, 220 points in those playoff weeks that's going to take that first prize.
Steve, full disclosure, I don't know if you have Jalen Hurts on any of your teams where you're considering starting him this week. But for the purposes of this question, let's pretend you do. We've seen some pretty good things out of him the last couple of weeks, and we know that he has a good matchup here again in Week 16. So as you look at potentially starting Hurts against this Cowboys defense, how likely is it that fantasy owners should probably break ties in favor of starting Hurts this week?
Well, it's a high risk. However, when you have a quarterback that runs that much, that he makes up for a lot of the risk. Any quarterback that's going to run 100 yards in a game. One of the issues I have is the Cowboy defense, believe it or not, has been playing better in the last few weeks. And this is one of those kind of crunch games. Those guys in the same division. So I'm not sure I would roll him out in front of another elite quarterback or top quarterback that I've already chosen this week. There's just something smells funny about this game, and he might not have the weeks like he's had. But at the same time, a quarterback that runs that much, you have to consider it.
Yeah, and that would be a tough lineup decision for me. Steve, it's, that player, if I had him, I think I'd want to get him in my lineup. He's given a magnificent spark to a team that was really and truly dead in the water. 338 yards, 3 touchdowns, running for 1 touchdown. I probably would have to get him in my lineup over most every quarterback unless I had one of the true elite ones. But it would be a tough decision. What's the toughest decision that you've got this week?
Well, we talked about it a little bit earlier, and that was the Keenan Allen decision, and in particular, who I put him in between Corey Davis and
I think that's a once bitten, twice shy kind of thing. I think you made your decision. I don't think that was a tough one.
It could be a lot worse.
You made that decision several days ago. But I'm talking about the one that's going to have you checking your phone on Christmas Eve. That's the one I'm talking about. The one
I mean, again, I think that I haven't really dug into my starting lineups yet for this week. Unfortunately, being Christmas week, I'm running behind on work. I usually start on Tuesdays. But the other one that I had was I started Mostert in a couple of these championship level top 100 teams, and I was worried about how that might shake out. And then James Robinson as well and his ankle issue. And, what happens if James Robinson doesn't start, what's left down there? And there's really nothing left. And I don't have, in terms of backup on them teams, I'm heavy in wide receiver and tight end. And I don't really have a good choice for filling in there. So I think that's going to be the ones that are going to cause me to lose a little sleep, figuring out how I'm going to roll out the best team for be competitive this week.
You may lose a little sleep, but if I were you, I'm gonna wake up Sunday morning with a big smile on my face and ready to go.
I'm always smiling.
There you are,
because I get to play fantasy football, like you say, I get to wake up to football and enjoy this wonderful game that we still have during a weird COVID year. And that's another thing, too. Having fantasy football this year has really been good for me. Otherwise, with these lockdowns and other things, it would have been, a lot longer, feeling like it was a lot longer time frame for me. So this gave me something to do.
I'm right there with you, Steve. I really appreciate taking stock of everything I have in my life, and certainly fantasy football has been right at the top of that list too. Getting to enjoy this all season long. It's going to stink when it goes away in February after the Super Bowl, but we'll make do somehow. And I know some of these emailers are going to be doing the same thing here. The first one who wants to ask you questions, Alan in Riverside, California. He writes, how much are you trusting a hobbled Julio Jones if he is active this weekend, Steve? Good luck in Week 16. Thank you for the email, Alan in Riverside, California. I didn't see the practice report today. I don't know if he was held out. I just assumed he was being held out since it's only Wednesday. But I know that Raheem Morris was talking up Julio Jones as being, maybe a little bit further along than he has the last couple of weeks. So if he's active, no denying his talent, Steve, but how risky do you want to get knowing that he could pull up on that hamstring and miss the rest of the game?
Yeah, I wouldn't start him. I wouldn't start him this week. If I got any kind of other option, I wouldn't do it.
Farrell, are you of the same line of thinking there that Julio Jones is simply too risky to start even if he is active?
Yeah,
I was
I
thinking
think it's too risky to start, but also I don't see the motivation for either the team or him to get out there at all. I risk injuring his hamstring even more. It's at the end of the year. They're not playing for anything. He has nothing to prove. I wouldn't put him in the lineup.
Yeah, I think you hit it perfect, Balky, because if he does get on the field, it's questionable if he is the true Julio Jones, and then he immediately comes off the field. We don't want another want another Keenan Allen.
He hasn't been the true Julio Jones this whole year, even when he was out there running around healthy. So, I would certainly start I would start Russell Gage over him this week if I had that option.
Gage is too. He's been turning it, and I know it's been without Julio Jones, but he has been getting a lot of targets in that offense. So that's could be a Sharky flex as we look forward to Week 16 here, no doubt. Tony in Southfield, Michigan, Steve writes, I own both Cardinals running backs and have been starting Drake over Edmonds until I saw the Cardinals gave more touches to Edmonds last week. Beg your pardon. Who should I roll with in my title game on Saturday between Drake and Edmonds?
Who they're playing? The San Francisco, right?
Yes, correct.
Pretty sure they're playing San Francisco. Yeah. Well, last week they really got you because Edmonds was on the questionable list all the way up to game time. And then they roll him out there, and everyone expected a big game from Drake. And as you said, the game script was all Edmonds. And, not just through the air. They handed it off to him, too. So something's going on there. I don't know what it is, but Drake's had a pretty decent year, pretty productive year. You talking about a tough call? That's a tough call. I would, based on the matchup, though, I would probably tend to go with Edmonds because I would expect that you want to have the third down back in there more. The game's per script's probably going to set up that way.
Farrell, how do you fall in on that Drake versus Edmonds if you can only play one?
That's Steve's got it right. That's very, very difficult. I'm biased towards Drake. I believe Drake is a better skilled player, and it takes a lot for me to put the better player on the bench despite what they did touches the week before. So I want to play my best player.
There's a coin flip there.
Yes, exactly, yes. And a coin flip that could determine whether you win your league or not. Which is
I would caution you. I would say I would agree with you to go with Drake if it's a league championship or not. You're going to have to go with the odds on that. But I would also look at the game script, and if these guys are going to be playing from behind, which I suspect they will be, it may be a lot of passing, and that sets up better for Edmonds.
Farrell, I am fresh out of emails for Steve tonight, but I know you have one last question for him.
No, it's the question everybody wants to hear, Steve. You've given us such great information. I don't know how you could top it, but we really focus on the bust, but we really, really would like to know. Waivers are done. We can't go get him unless he's on the roster. But, if he's there and you've just missed him, he's right there in plain sight, and you can't see him on your roster even though you put him on there. Who is the sleeper that's on your roster? The bust and the sleeper, that the guy that you wish you had to play this weekend.
That's a good one. Are you talking about on one of my championship teams?
Or just in general.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh, we stumped him.
You got me there. Let me think through this a second.
Acquisitions are over because the waiver
the...
wires are done, so you're going to have to concentrate on the merger part of it.
Yeah, I would say who, if I had them.
Steve, let me throw this one.
Okay.
Let me throw this one at you while you think of one, because this has been a popular one in fantasy circles and content sites and podcasts this week, and that's been talking. We haven't really talked about it much on the show today, but the possibility of maybe benching Russell Wilson this week, given the fact that Rashad Penny's back. It seems like Seattle really wants to pound that ground game, and they're not really going to, quote, let Russ cook until the fourth quarter, if they even need him to cook in the fourth quarter. Now, he typically has not had a lot of monster games against Sean McVay's Rams before, and I think you could make a case for some other players that you've always been playing over Russell Wilson that might make better starts than him this week. How polarizing is it for you? Is he a guy that you might want to consider starting, or is his ceiling too valuable? Is it too high for you to sit Russell Wilson in Week 16?
Yeah, I think that's where you got to play the odds and go with the highest skilled player with the chance to put up the biggest numbers. Yeah, I would go ahead and I wouldn't fade Wilson this week. I'd keep him in any lineup I had him. If I picked him in number one, you're going to live and die with your pick.
Yeah, me neither. He's playing.
Yeah, I definitely keep him in there. In terms of somebody, there's actually a sleeper, or not just a sleeper, just somebody I think is going to have a monster week this week, and I don't have him on any roster, I don't believe, at all, and that is Sanders. I believe that, especially if you still got the ankle injuries and virtually all the other wide receivers there. I expect, and looking at the matchups with the cornerback wide receiver matchups and tight end matchups, I think you're going to see Daniel Sanders have a monster day and possibly even Jared Cook.
Ooh, Christmas Day receivers, Balky. Christmas Day receivers. I love it.
I'm actually, in that game's going to be so interesting to me because, well, first of all, I think the Vikings are like a 7-point underdog, which is strange to me given that Drew Brees was a 40% passer in his first game back. He won't have Michael Thomas. I don't know. I'm hoping they unleash Alvin Kamara. I need him in so many. Well, I mean, who doesn't need Alvin Kamara in Week 16? But it would be so great if he went off that game too. But maybe it is more of a well-rounded attack with Emmanuel. I mean, what did he get last week? He got 4 for 76, I think. Jared Cook, it was so weird because we thought that with the return of Drew Brees would be the return of Jared Cook's stats. It didn't happen, but maybe it was just a week away. We'll see what happens there. But Christmas Day, I'll definitely be glued to that Vikings-Saints game.
Yeah, if you look at that secondary, though, I mean, Emmanuel Sanders is a consummate professional. He has the smarts to really create separation on those younger guys that are out there for the Vikings, and the Vikings defense have been fading it, here at the end as well. And although I expect Kamara to go off, I think you're going to see the three between them, the tight end and Sanders and Kamara, all three have big days. I think Brees is going to have a big day. I think the Vikings are very susceptible. I wouldn't be surprised if they hang 40 points on them.
And as we look at the FFPC main event leaderboards and the Football Guys Players Championship leaderboards, we won't be surprised to see Steve Highfill's name on there 40-plus times. Who knows? Because he definitely has a lot of teams in the championship round in both contests. Steve, can't thank you enough for coming on during a busy Christmas week to talk a little fantasy football with Farrell and I. We are indebted to you. Good luck in Week 16. I hope you bring home as much cheddar as possible. And hopefully the ball bounces your way going forward. Real good to talk to you. Hopefully we'll do this again soon, man.
Sounds good. I really enjoyed it. Thanks for having me, guys. Merry Christmas, everybody.
Merry Christmas. Happy holidays
That's
to
great.
my friend. Season's greetings to Steve Highfill, owner of 16 FFPC main event and Football Guys Players Championship League titles. He's got 10 teams in the championship round, 3 in the top 100, 2 in the top 200 of the main event. So he's definitely within striking distance. Farrell, Alex and I were talking about this. Well, we weren't talking about it. We were talking about it via an online Slack chat. But Alex pointed out that during week 14, I think it was in the Football Guys Players Championship, some team was in like 2,800th place or something and shot up into like the top 40 or 50 just in 1 week with a very successful opening weekend of the championship round. And again, it's only 1 week, but that's how fast things can change when you get down to this 3-week sprint. And it's going to be fun. I'm glad it stretches over 4 days too, as one of my, I have many holiday plans with my family, but one of my big holiday plans will be watching a lot of football this weekend. Very excited. I'm sure you're going to be doing the same thing.
Oh, I can't wait. And you can adjust your strategies a little bit that way. If you don't get the performance you want, you can move a guy in and out. A riskier play that might give you better points. And if you get a big performance, you can make a safer play later in the weekend. I think Steve's right on with Sanders, and I think that player has been criminally underused this year in the Saints offense. I think he should have been a much, much bigger part of it. Down around the goal line, they don't let him score the ball, so many weird things happen in the red zone. It seems like for him to get in the end zone, he's got to attack it from outside the 20. I think Steve said this player's a well prepared veteran player who doesn't hang his quarterback out. He runs crisp routes. He knows how to catch the ball with his hands, throw the ball to him more often.
Yeah, and he was a guy that I drafted as like my number 5, my number 6 receiver in a lot of Kentucky leagues this year for sure. And I was hoping that I'd get better performances from him. But you're right. I don't necessarily view it as his fault. I think it was just he was a victim of circumstance, victim of the offense, and hopefully better things are in store. Maybe he'll bring it all back, make it all worthwhile with a huge week 16, and make everything all better.
Balky, speaking of Kentucky, we must let the listeners know that you are that you are continuing to challenge for several championships. I'm very, very proud of what you're doing. You've got probably some tough decisions to make because you're sitting right there at the precipice. The money's not as big, but the bragging rights certainly are big. And, I'm going to, especially everyone that listens, I'd love to talk to you about playing in Kentucky, but all the guys that have been on the show, I'm going to contact them once the season's over and try to stay in touch with them and invite them to play. Steve, I'm going to stalk him. I'm just going to send him. He said he's in Jacksonville. I'm going to look up all the airlines and see what's the best way to get him here is. Because he's a guy that we want to have in a room. What a great player. What a history.
Yeah.
That he has.
Yeah, very knowledgeable, very successful, great track record for him. Love to compete against him in the KFFSC for sure. Let's try to pound out as many emails as we can here tonight. Let's kick things off with the city of brotherly love. It's where Fred resides, and he writes, to my little fantasy football elves, it seems like each of these guys have gone from unstartable to startable and back again this season. So who do I play between Marquise Brown and Chase Claypool now? Marquise Brown playing for the Baltimore Football Ravens. They are at home against the Giants at 1 o'clock on Sunday. The reeling Steelers, the Pittsburgh Reelers, I guess as it were, going up against this week. They take on after that Bengals loss. They are battling. Why can I not find it here? I just had it up. The Steelers are taking on the Colts. Thank you, Farrell. Another 1 o'clock game on Sunday. That game is at home. I know Brown's been turning it on, and certainly the Steelers seem to be trending in the opposite direction. Deontay Johnson's getting all the love there right now. Farrell, I think I'm leaning towards Marquise Brown here. Am I going to regret that?
No, if you're Steve and you're sitting at the top, Marquise Brown is the play. Marquise is going to get you a solid 15 points. He's caught touchdowns in 3 of the 4 last games. His high of the league is 19.8, or high of the year, 19.8 versus Cincy in Week 5. So he's the play if you're at the top. If you have to be like the team Alex was telling us about, that came from in the 2800s and shot up, you're going to play Claypool, because Claypool is the player amongst these two that has the opportunity to put together a 40-point game. Now, that's heresy if you've watched the Steelers play. But, if we could get fantasy points for pass interference, Claypool would continue to put up points for you, because that's the only way that a lot of the defenders can keep him out of the ball. And they missed a call on him in this last game, but I digress. He's had under 10 points for the last 3 games, but he's the guy that's going to turn in the performance. We could talk about this. It could take a whole show to talk about what's going wrong in Pittsburgh. It's been with all the receivers. You're right. Johnson scored for him against Cincinnati, and you could see pressure just coming off those shoulders. I hope the team gets it right. They're too good of a team to discard, to throw on the junk heap here in the last quarter of the season. Claypool could deliver the points you need to move up the board.
Let's move on and talk to Scott in Greenville, Illinois. He writes, "Hey, Farrell and Balky, I dropped George Kittle seemingly forever ago and picked up Logan Thomas, not expecting much. But now with his recent play, should I bench Robert Tonyan for playing Thomas against the Panthers in my title game?" Scott in Greenville, Illinois, we certainly appreciate it. He's had a lot of success picking tight ends here, Farrell, from Kittle to Thomas to Tonyan. And I like both Thomas and Tonyan this week. I guess for me, knowing that the quarterback situation as it is right now, it's tough for me to say Logan Thomas is the play, because I think there's going to be so many points scored in that Packers-Titans Sunday night game. So I'd lean towards Tonyan.
Yeah. I do too, and Logan Thomas. If you're in the FFPC and you have both these players, you might try to get them both on the field. If you've got a 1:00 game, I think Washington and Carolina, and the schedule makers have done you a favor. Sunday night is the matchup with the Green Bay and Tennessee. Thomas is coming off 13-catch game. Tonyan has most targets for the season has been, I think, 7. But boy, they're high-quality targets when Rodgers is throwing the ball. If Alex Smith goes, feel confident in playing Thomas. If he doesn't, you can just roll in with Tonyan on Sunday night. But yeah, both those guys are going to be in my lineup.
Especially in FFPC premium, tight end 1.5 per catch certainly makes a lot of sense to get them both in if you can. Corey in Alpharetta, Georgia. I waited on quarterback this year and was happy to get good production from the position. The problem is that it has often been on my bench. I can't get my start-sits right between Justin Herbert and Ryan Tannehill. Who is the correct guy this weekend? Thanks for getting me into my championship game. That's Corey in Alpharetta, Georgia. So congratulations on that, Corey, and we're happy that we could have helped. Tannehill, we just said, is at Green Bay on Sunday night. Justin Herbert is taking on the Denver Broncos in Los Angeles. Farrell, is the total enough on Sunday Night Football, enough for you to say Tannehill's the player? Or are you still betting with Herbert with maybe a seemingly somewhat healed Keenan Allen?
What a great problem to have, and yes, you can look forward to what our friends in the desert have installed as a total, but you can also look back. You could win a lot of bets when you say, what's the number one scoring offense in the NFL this year? And I don't think a lot of people would say Tennessee, but, it's close, but they're right there at the top, 31.1, 37.3 points for the Titans over the last 3 games. The Packers over the last 3 games, by the way, 28.3, which is sort of an interesting number too. But this Tannehill's my guy here. It's difficult to put Justin Herbert on the bench, but that's a divisional game, and you know how funny divisional games can get, especially with Denver a team that wants to run the ball, and Gordon gets a revenge game in his return to play the Chargers. But Tannehill's my guy here. You could go on and on about it. So many ways for him to have red zone success. We talked about the tight ends down there. It's not good to start any of them for fantasy football other than Jonnu Smith, but you put them all together. Tight end position gives you 10 touchdowns in the red zone. Henry, a threat anywhere on the field, especially in the red zone. The receivers are great red zone targets, both Brown and Davis. Tannehill has so many weapons that a lot of us just haven't considered. And as they move through the playoffs this year, if they have any kind of success, if the coach will get out of the way and let them play, this team, these guys are going to become household names, and we're not going to be able to draft them at some of the bargain slots that we could get them at in the 2020 draft.
You know, the other thing, too, is I think that total on that Packers-Titans game, not that I want to keep coming back to it, but it's like at 56.5 or 57. It would not surprise me if that total approaches 60 points by kickoff on Sunday night. We got a ways to go before we get there. I mean, we're talking about 5 days where that line can move, and I expect a very fun game, a lot of exciting offense, so that's probably where I would lean to and start Tannehill over Herbert this week. Don in San Antonio, final email we're going to get to this week. What a roller coaster my fantasy team has been on this season, but it somehow has culminated in playing for a title. I didn't think I'd be facing this decision a month ago, but now I have to decide between Le'Veon Bell or Leonard Fournette for all the marbles. Can you help me out, Don in San Antonio? We will do our best, my friend. This is very intriguing matchup for both of these players this week. No Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Le'Veon Bell. It's the Le'Veon Bell and Darrell Williams show, essentially, at home against Atlanta. Leonard Fournette does go on the road, but it's Detroit, and it sounds like Ronald Jones won't be available for that game, so it'll probably be LaShawn McCoy giving some respite to Leonard Fournette. How do you sort of handicap this, Farrell, between Bell and Fournette? Quite frankly, this is almost a coin flip for me after I saw what Fournette did last week.
Yeah, and then they share the opponent. Fournette did his action last week against Atlanta, correct? Yeah. 14 rushes, 49 yards, 3 catches for 16 yards. Bell put up slightly better but similar numbers in his contest last week. Bell, you try to look at motivations of the players. Fournette's had a role with this team. Bell's been kicked around out of football. This is a chance for him to prove that he is an elite player. He's always believed he's an elite player, and I believe he is too. A lot of our fantasy drafters turn their back on him, and once he joins the Chiefs, he says, well, he's keeping good company. He'll have fantasy value and standalone fantasy value. But he is the guy. Darrell Williams and Darwin Thompson have around 40 rushes a year for the season collectively. I think they're both capable players. Williams can catch the ball pretty well. But it's going to be the Le'Veon Bell show, and what a team to get it going against with that offense playing against the Atlanta Falcons. I'm going to go with Le'Veon Bell to assert himself to be the player that he believes he is, and the player that Kansas City is going to need him to be to get through the playoffs.
I think both these teams are going to be living in the red zone this weekend. I think the Bucs and the Chiefs both put up a lot of points. Here's the difference for me. Atlanta's rush defense surprisingly has not been that bad this season. In fact, you could probably make the case it's been good because most teams just shred their pass defense and they don't have to necessarily worry about running the ball and establishing the run, as it were. So I guess for me, I would say, well, maybe Bell's not the right play, but remember, he's such a valuable pass catcher out of the backfield, and I know he doesn't have the explosive burst he used to, and he's certainly not the player he used to, but he does still have hands. He is still a skilled pass catcher, and I think that's the difference for me. Fournette, to me, I've never really bought, he had that 74-catch season or whatever it was last year, and I never really thought that was something to build on for him. I think the pass-catching chops of Bell separate these guys for me this week. Still very close. Again, these are your teams. Go with your gut. But for me, I'm going to agree with my good buddy Farrell and say Le'Veon Bell is the start for you this week, Don in San Antonio. Thank you for listening. And Farrell, thanks for hanging out this week. This was a pleasure doing the Christmas show this year as we got to talk to Steve Highfill. This was awesome. And I wish you happy holidays. I hope you have a very Merry Christmas. I hope the ball bounces your way in all your games this weekend. And we'll do this again next Wednesday on New Year's Eve.
Yes, Balky, we will, and I will reveal to everyone that listens your success in the KFFSC this weekend, because I think you're going to have a lot to be proud of. Merry Christmas, buddy.
Well, thank you. I certainly hope you didn't jinx it, but we'll see what happens there, dude. Remember to check out Farrell and his Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship, which I love playing in every single year. KFFSC.com. Certainly wonderful to have you on, dude. Talk to you again soon. Farrell Elliott, ladies and gentlemen, hopping aboard as my co-host once again this evening. What an addition he's been to this podcast. Certainly love having him on. And that is going to do it for our show, ladies and gentlemen, this week. Now, before we go, I do have a few announcements I want to make regarding the next week of the show, because we're going to be doing something very cool next week. First of all, happy birthday to Michael Inyang, to Todd Hunter, two former guests of this show. They're celebrating their birthdays right around Christmas time. I know that's always wonderful for people who get to do that, so happy birthday, guys. Steve Highfill, Farrell Elliott, the FFPC, Rob Bryce, and, of course, each and every one of you get my festive thanks for hanging out and listening and doing the show, hanging out with us in the chat room this week. This is awesome, and we'll do it again next week. Brad Cruz on the High Stakes Lowdown, that will be coming out the wee hours of Christmas Eve morning. So before you get together with family, friends, whatever you're doing, listen to the Brad Cruz High Stakes Lowdown and get set to set those lineups on Friday. Christmas Day game, Vikings Saints, triple header on Saturday. You're going to have to get these lineups in early. I know it's a kind of a pain to do it during Christmas because there's so much else going on, but don't let all that preparation you did over the course of the year be ruined this week. Get those lineups in. Hopefully the ball bounces your way. Okay. Register for the FFPC and Football Guys Playoff Challenges today at myffpc.com. For sure you want to get aboard on that. $200 to win $500,000, $35 to win $100,000. What is better than that? It is the only way to watch playoff football. As I alluded to Farrell, Wednesday, 10/9 Central, we will be on. We'll be on with the FFPC main event leader, which is awesome. We never get the leader on this time of year. Now, what's interesting about this is he will know if he has won the $500,000 when we have him on Wednesday. His name is Steve Liska, and he co-owns the team with three buddies from college, Matt Walters, Rick Victor, and Brian Winters. All four of those guys will be on the program next Wednesday with me and Farrell. I believe logistically we can make it happen on Blog Talk Radio. If we have to have two on at one time and then bring two on again, we will make it happen. We'll get all four of these guys on. Hopefully they're celebrating a $500,000 grand prize. If not, we'll get the sad story of how it didn't happen. They have a very, very slight lead over John Gifford right now. I think less than 2 points in the main event. So anything can happen, and usually does in the FFPC. That is next Wednesday at 10/9 Central. Hop aboard for that. Happy holidays, season's greetings, Merry Christmas to everybody who is celebrating this year. Very blessed to be able to do this podcast each and every week, and very blessed to have listeners like you to tune in. So thank you so much. Please continue to do so. We'll continue to produce this show. Enjoy Week 16. Go out and win those championships. I hope you're going to have a great story to tell. Your championship round weekend starts now.
This has been another episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour, presented by myffpc.com. It was broadcast live and heard around the world. Balky and Farrell will be back next week with more analysis, interviews, and advice from guests much smarter than they are. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk with you again next week.
Thanks again to Frederick DeYounger for our outro music. Check out all their music at frederickdeyounger.com. Check out Quiet Hollers music at quiethollers.com. They do the intro music to the show each and every week here. Love those guys. They're fantastic, and they make fantastic music. Hopefully, you guys are making some fantastic music in your championship weeks this week. Go out and win, and hopefully we'll get you on the show to tell us all about it. Merry Christmas, everybody. We'll talk to you on Wednesday.